To measure a customer for a personalised saddle, we need a certain amount of information. We need height and weight. We need your gene size, and your age is a great help because as people grow, they quite often change. The other three main things we need are measurements, and I'm going to ask Daniel here to measure around his butt, and it's pretty important that you get around the widest part, and inches is great, but any way it comes, that's terrific. Yep, that's good. And now around the top of one thigh. Okay, and then the inside leg measurement on the bottom. It's 31. Now the reason for the inside leg measurement, it helps us to establish the length of fenders, which is very, very important on a fender saddle. Like people, horses come in all shapes and sizes, and they vary depending on the season, from when they're really poor to when they're fat. And it's really important when you're choosing a saddle, we're choosing a saddle to suit, that we get as much information as we can about your particular horse or the breed of horses that you ride. And if you've got a range of horses, we usually ask people to get some photos and some particulars about the extremes, the highest wither horse, the broadest horse. And we put all that information together and design something that'll suit the range of horses that you ride. So first of all, we ask you to take a side-on photo of the horse, and then to get up on a rail behind the horse, look down over the top of the shoulder so that we can see the width here beside the withers. And the other thing we ask, and it's really critical, is we get a piece of fencing wire like this, very simple, is just to put it over the top of the horse's wither, like that, and pretty well at the front of where you'd imagine the front of the saddle would sit. And it's also a good idea to take a photo of yourself putting that wire in so we can see, because obviously if you put it back here, you're going to get a very different reading to up here. So we really need very accurate information, and that'll really help us to determine the best fit for the horse. The other thing we look at is we really got to design a saddle that'll fit your widest horse and use pads and things which I'll talk about later on to fit your narrow horses. Then we get the wire like this, trace it out on a bit of piece of paper, and you can either fax it, email or whatever, and we use that as a guide for the shape of your horse and the design of the saddle. All the information that you give us about your particular horse will really help us to decide the best tree to suit your horses. And for the purpose of this exercise, we've got these different trees to show you the difference of a different style of tree. We've got here a stock horse tree, which for this particular horse the tree is too narrow. I'll change over to a semi-quarter horse, which does sit down a little bit lower, but this horse in this particular condition, I still feel that this saddle is a little bit narrow for that particular horse. And we'll try a quarter horse tree. And this tree sits down really nicely, still enough room in the top, in the gullet, for freedom there. And it's very important to keep that wither and backbone really free so that the horse can move freely. Also critical is that the shoulders, that the front of the saddle is not digging into the front of the shoulders so that it doesn't restrict it. So it is really important, and we do take a lot of care and a lot of trouble to make sure that when we say we make a custom-made saddle, we do really go into it and do the best to match a saddle that'll fit your horse. When we get all those particulars together with the particulars to fit your horse, we send it all down to our tree maker, Bob Wattis.
Morning, my name's Bob Wattis. We make Lower Kent's trees, saddle trees. All of the trees are custom made. All the angle of the bars, width of the bars, candle heights, the gullet and the swell height, the pad, angle of the pad, height of the pad, whether it's got spring bars. Every part of these trees are custom. Then we hand grind in the seat to fit the customer.
So the tree comes back with your name on it, and that's your customised tree, all ready to go in your saddle. If the tree is right and it's designed to fit your horse and the rider, really we got the easy part, putting the leather on, and you can be assured of a really great customised saddle. It's really important to understand the benefits of having a range of different saddle cloths and pads and different things to help you fit a big range of horses, different conditions. So if a saddle's fitting a horse well, you can't beat having a light saddle cloth like this one. Even the old collar check was the traditional old cloth, and it sat really low on the horse so that the saddle is not sitting up any higher than it needs to be. And it's important to remember that saddle comfort for the horse is about shape, not softness. So we don't need a lot of padding to make it comfortable with the horse. So with that there, it's only a light cloth sitting down nicely, and that works really well. For a horse that's a little bit narrow for this particular saddle, the way to go is to add a pad. So for this purpose, we've got a neoprene pad here, which will go on. And the thing about to remember is that every time we add a pad to the horse, we actually change the shape of the horse. And that's really important to remember. So don't use the same pad and cloths no matter what horse you're riding. Just be aware of the importance and the value in having that range of different cloths and pads. For a horse that's got a particularly high wither, or if sometimes a horse drops down in condition, there can be a possibility that the gullet can touch down on the top of the wither. If you've got a situation like that, instead of having to buy a special saddle for it, we have here designed a cutaway chamber pad, which the idea of that is to lift the saddle a bit, but give plenty of clearance in the gullet and the backbone. I'll sit it on there like that. So the beauty of that is that it still gives that little bit of clearance and freedom so that there's plenty of movement up along the backbone and there's no danger of touching down on the top of the wither. It works really well.